giant, random, pink bunny rabbit. And I am here to talk to you about the credibility of a speaker. Trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. Assumptions and judgments are formed very quickly and last for a very long time and can be very difficult to overcome. And I ask you to think about how you believe what you believe and who you believe and why you believe them. In this day and age, we are just inundated from all angles with people trying to sell us things and people trying to convince us of things and believe things and adhere to other people's views and ideas or purchase whatever it is they're selling. And I want you to really think about why you believe a message from somebody that is giving it to you. I think about camping with my child. One of our favorite things to do, my 2-year-old kiddo and I, is to look for Bigfoot when we're camping. We do Bigfoot calls and we knock on trees and we try to find Bigfoot while we're camping. And the other day we did some calls, we were doing everything that we could to lure Bigfoot in so we could see him. And I asked my kiddo, I said, "Hey, do you see Bigfoot right now?" He looked around and he said, "Yes." I said, "You do?" He said, "I see 3 Bigfoot." And I'm looking and I see 0 Bigfoot. And not that my child is inherently a liar, but he's not able to distinguish at that point what he really sees and what's his imagination. Some people never grow out of that, just for the record. But he's not a credible source when it comes to spotting Bigfoot or whether or not he actually went to the bathroom or how many M&Ms he took. Not a credible source. I think about Bigfoot being a perfect example of whether we believe somebody or not. I, myself, knowing and believing that Bigfoot is real, have no problems with this. But in many academic circles, Bigfoot's rejected as a believable creature. And part of that is because a lot of academics don't believe the people that have witnessed seeing Bigfoot. And academic folks aren't out doing that. Academia can be this very alienating and exclusive, almost sorority or fraternity-like organization that doesn't like people from outside, telling them what to think or believe or what's true or what's not. They dismiss many folks who haven't gone through that system and don't like to hear things from outside of that. I challenge you to think about who's more likely to see a Bigfoot. Is it somebody who's sitting in an office in a city somewhere with their suit on and they're not out in the wild? Or is it somebody who's probably wearing camouflage, potentially maybe did or did not go through academia or school or whatever that is, but they're out hunting and they know how to be in wilderness and how to be quiet and how to avoid making a ruckus to scare all the animals away. And they're looking for animals, and then they might have this random encounter and see a Bigfoot. That, to me, is probably a more credible witness who's more likely to have that experience than a lot of other folks. So as you think about what is credible and what is not in this AI-generated fake world, I ask you all to think, what makes somebody credible? Interestingly, somebody's walking by right now, probably thinks I'm crazy. Not credible. Anyways, as you think about what is credible and what makes somebody believable, what are the factors for you that go into deeming whether or not a person is credible, reliable, trustworthy? And as you think about what this is, you need to understand that there's a lot of things that can interfere with our view or our belief of if a person is or is not credible. And I think for the next little while, I want you to take a couple minutes, ponder what it is that you think of as a person who's credible or not credible. And how do we discern, how do we decipher if somebody can be trusted, can be believed? Because you will constantly, and for the rest of your life, have people breathing down your neck, trying to get you to believe something, to agree with them, to buy their product, to vote for them, to support whatever their cause might be. And how is it that you determine whether or not a person is credible or not? I'll see you in a few minutes. Hello, I'm Drew Mikita, a professor of psychology at Colorado Mountain College, coming to you from the Paul and Eileen Finkel Auditorium on the Breckenridge CMC campus. I'm here to talk to you more about the credibility of a witness, what makes a person believable, and why we think that we know if someone's honest or dishonest or lying or truthful or whatever it might be. There's a lot of factors for us that go into whether or not we believe what somebody says. And we all have different biases and judgments and assumptions that we make about people, and it's really important that we're aware of what those assumptions might be. Your past experience with somebody, whether or not you liked them, didn't like them, had a good encounter or not. For example, if one of your best friends tells you a story that you trust and have known your whole life, you're really going to probably believe that. If some random wandering person who looks like they're tripping on mushrooms comes up to you and tells you a story about how they just saw a fire-breathing dragon around the corner, you might not find that as plausible. So past experience with people is a big piece of this. Also, there's things that, like demographics about a person, that a lot of folks will hold bias towards. Not just people that are racist or sexist or homophobic or this or that, but people have biases against other people that may be significant and hate-filled, or they might be subtle in things that they're not even entirely aware of. And this could be age or even like height and other factors of things. For some people, race does matter about a message. If they're this extremely racist person, they're going to hold that against the person and what their message is. Biases against people's looks. There's evidence to support that people that have hair versus bald people speaking are more believed. So all of these factors go in for some people to whether or not we believe somebody. A lot of people are able to rise above some of these small things, but people do hold judgments. Another thing that's really important to look at is how much somebody relates to you in a lot of ways, whether that be the way they look, their socioeconomic status, their geographical location that they come from, age, or political beliefs. If we have some similarity with people, we're often going to find them to be more credible and believable than if we have absolutely nothing in common with that person. I often look and try to determine whether or not somebody has a motive to convince me of something being true or not. And that could be motivations for, as I talked in the last video about politics, trying to get you to vote for something. Sales and marketing and advertising, trying to get you to buy something. Money is often an answer when it comes to things like this, but so is power and control and support. So looking at what somebody's motivation might be to get you to believe them is another really big piece. If somebody is not sure of themselves, lacks confidence, it's hard for people to believe somebody who doesn't even believe themselves. So the confidence of a person who's saying that, but that can also be a little tricky because sometimes people have great conviction about what they believe, but the whole thing could be total bullshit and completely made up and not accurate, but they have great confidence. So overconfidence and arrogance and somebody being pompous can turn you off. But yet somebody who lacks confidence and doesn't even seem to really believe themselves also could impact their credibility. Eye contact and the way that a person speaks, just if they're animated and they're engaging and they're funny and have a good message that you're enjoying the way that it's being delivered, will impact if you actually find that message to be credible or believable, which is tough because there's a lot of people that are not good public speakers who are really intelligent and have great things to say and really good insight and valuable information, but maybe they're not great at standing in front of a group of people and delivering that. So confidence, eye contact, the message and the way that it's being delivered is really important. A lot of times if we have some problem hearing or understanding that person, maybe they have an accent that's different than the one that you speak with or the one that you're used to hearing. Their speaking style as a whole can do that. Things can be distracting. I talk with my hands a lot, as you all probably know by this point. That can also be distracting. If they're fidgety and constantly moving around and tugging at their clothes or seem uncomfortable in that situation, that also can impact their credibility. Professionalism is something that is very subjective because what's professional and for one person might be really off-putting for another.
And that kind of lends street cred if you have some street credit to who you are and the way that you look. I'm also a licensed professional counselor, and generally I am not dressed in a suit and tie and fancy hat. I'm usually in very comfortable clothing. For some people, they deem that to be very unprofessional. For other people, I look like how they look, or I dress how they look, how they like to dress. So they see me as relatable. So professionalism and relatability are highly subjective and fluid, and depending on the individual, could have great variability. As we look at what these factors are, we've got to realize that there's many aspects that go into a message that's being given to you. And there's interference and there's noise. For example, there's things behind me, and you might be in a room that's really loud and crowded, or you could be looking out a window and totally spacing out. There could be distractions in the background that could be pulling away from that. And almost everything that I've talked about to this point has very little to do with actual scientific credibility, whether or not somebody knows what they're doing from an objective standpoint. So if I were to be researching, let's just use COVID as an example. The amount of people that became amateur doctors during the time of COVID, when we started to ignore people that had been studying infectious disease their entire lives and made careers out of it and used the scientific method and these highly intense approaches that are credible, is significant. And then we had people who just have random blogs on the internet telling you that why COVID isn't real or this or that. Like, we give credit often to people that don't necessarily deserve it because they haven't formed that education behind it. And again, education does not just have to come from a classroom or traditional setting. It can come from a lot of ways. But in this day and age with the internet and blogs and everybody being an expert and influencer and this and that, we give a lot of credibility to people that maybe don't have any sort of intellectual or academic backing to that. So there's a lot of factors that go into what deems a person to be credible, and we let our personal biases often influence how we view somebody as credible or not. And I challenge you all to look at what are the biases that maybe you hold. What are the things and the judgments that you make about people that interfere with you being able to make a good, informed decision about the credibility of a person and the message that they're delivering? And there are a lot of factors that can influence you, and it's not a problem to have bias. Bias is something that we all carry. It's being aware of that bias that really does make a big difference. So what are those biases? What are those judgments? What are those interferences or noises that get in the way of you being able to objectively hear a message and discern the information that you're given? Be back in a few. Thank you.
Hi everybody, and welcome back for the last part of our video about credibility of a speaker or a witness or of a person. This might shock you, but if you paid really close attention to the first two parts of this video, believe it or not, I actually changed outfits during the video. In the first part, I was a pink bunny. Then I was wearing a fancy suit in an auditorium. Maybe you didn't even notice. It was so subtle. You could barely tell. Obviously joking and doing this for the effect of how much somebody's physical appearance and what they're wearing and who they are and the environment and the surrounding environment can impact how we receive a message. It's probably really hard to listen to somebody in a pink bunny rabbit suit standing by a beautiful river with golden leaves around you. There's distraction behind you. And then we switch into something a little bit more traditionally professional in academia and what that looks like. And then finally, this is just me sitting in my office in my normal everyday clothes. But we have a lot of factors that go into how we receive a message, and there can be interference, there can be noise, there can be distraction and things that will impact that, as well as our deeming whether or not somebody is credible off the get-go. Often people make snap decisions about if there's somebody's believable or credible pretty quickly within moments of that person starting to talk, and those can be hard to overcome. You never get a chance to make a second chance to make a first impression, and we have that when we're deeming people credible or reliable or not. So a couple things that I would encourage you all when you're looking at credibility is to try to be as objective as you can about somebody's message and reduce your biases. First, start by being aware of those, as we talked in that last video. Remove those as best you can and try to be objective in hearing what someone's saying instead of just determining whether or not you like that speaker. Sometimes people we don't like give us messages that are 100% true and accurate. So take that and really, really work on that as well. Also, like, if you want to understand credibility, like, ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions. Ask for clarity. And this is, for many of you, you're going to be going into a cults project at some point here soon and thinking about how cults do that. Cults discourage people from asking questions and just say, trust me, I know this. We don't like to just blindly trust people that don't deserve that. So really finding that balance of trusting people. We want to be a trusting person. I would love to live in a trusting world where we support and trust one another, but the line between being trusting and being naive is very thin. So be aware, stand up for yourself, ask questions. Don't be scared to confront people about whether or not what they're saying is truthful or honestly, and you can do that in a tactful, welcoming, warm sort of way. Research scientists generally don't mind people asking questions because it's usually not their opinion that they're talking about. Usually they're talking about results of a test. So they're able to remove that emotional component from it and talk in kind of a more intentional and direct and logical sort of way, as opposed to just, I don't like the way you look. I'm not going to believe you. So asking questions is really important. Seek other information. Look for things that are on the opposite side of this. And then you, being the independent thinker, decide that sounds like really good information. And this over here sounds completely flawed and biased. Like, for example, the tobacco industry has funded probably hundreds of millions of dollars of tests at this point to tell you that smoking doesn't cause lung cancer. Well, are they biased? Of course they are. Are they motivated? Of course they are. Do they have financial interest in this? Yes, absolutely. So look at who's funding things, why they might have a motivation or a belief to convince you of something and get you to think in one way or another. Do your own research. You're all smart thinkers. So listen, discern information, understand that everybody does have their own, everybody shows up to this moment right now with all their experiences in the world, and those have flaws, and those have things that can get in the way and make us believe something or not believe something. But keep an open mind to what's possible and really evaluate the way that people came to the knowledge that they came to. You're smart people. Use your brain to think and don't just be told things. We have things forced down our throats all the time. And the way that social media and the internet as a whole, they are weaponized against us. And that is, we're fighting a very uphill, terrifying battle against these media markets and these multi-billion and trillion-dollar companies that have motives for us to believe and think certain things. So do your own thinking, slow yourself down. Am I just taking this and believing it for no reason without any backing or credibility behind that? If so, like, why are you doing that? And evaluate. So those are the questions. The 3 questions that I asked you to ponder on for today is, what are the traits that you have that makes somebody a credible speaker? Second, what are your biases and judgments that might interfere your ability to objectively assess the credibility of a speaker? And then third, how is it that you can affirm somebody's credibility or discredit them by being a good critical thinker? Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great day. Appreciate you taking time to watch this.